Okay, everyone, welcome to another random walk down Mill Street. Here we are. And the topic for today is wedding blessings, the Sheva Brachot. Not the whole wedding ceremony. Maybe we'll save some aspects of the wedding ceremony for another class. But we're going to talk about the Sheva Brachot in the Spanish-Portuguese tradition. We're going to listen to some recordings. We're going to talk about some peculiarities. But the truth is that when you're dealing with nusach when you're dealing with the liturgy, especially when you're talking about the specific words, there are so many differences that can be talked about. I'm really only going to talk about one blessing in particular, which we're going to focus on. But we'll start by going through the whole Seder of the Sheva Brachot. I assume that people are familiar with it, but just a short background. The wedding ceremony in modern times that we are all pretty much familiar with. If you've been to any kind of Jewish funeral, well, wrong, turn that one off. Jewish wedding it really has a couple parts to it. There's the kiddushin. You have the actual giving of a ring, and then usually there's some kind of break, usually done, and there are blessings associated with that, which we're not going to listen to today. And then there's a break of some kind. In S&P world, that's done by a speech. In many places, they read the ketubah, and then you have the 7 blessings of the wedding blessings that will lead into breaking of the glass and then concluding with lots of dancing and whatnot. That's a very short summary. So we're only going to talk about the Sheva Brachot, that one aspect of the ceremony. We're not going to talk about breaking of the glass, which is an interesting topic. We're not going to talk about the first blessings. We're not going to talk about the ring. We're not going to talk about the ketubah. I do hope to follow up with something about the ketubah one of these weeks, because I think I have discovered some interesting things there, but that's not for tonight. So with that introduction, we're going to go right into our presentation for today. And the reason I'm doing it is because I've been to 3 weddings this month, in June, so it's on my mind. Okay. We are going to start with a little clip from my own wedding. Why? Because I get to relive a happy moment of my life, but also because we get to listen to some chazanim, including Reverend Sherman, who sadly is not with us, and we'll get to hear the choir, and that will lead us into some observations about differences between the Spanish-Portuguese ceremony when it's in the synagogue and when it's not in the synagogue, and that'll bring us on. But this is quite a long recording, so bear with me. I hope you enjoy it as much as I know I will, and that I did the first time around. So here we go.
Baruch atah בצלמו, בצלם דמות אביתו, ראיתי לו ממנו בניין עד אחד. ברוך אתה תשמח יצירך בגן עדן מקדם, ברוך אתה אדוני, נשמח חתן וכלה.
Baruch atah
So that was my Shabbat Brachot. I could end there and be very happy, but I have more prepared for you. So if you were listening carefully, oh, that's not what I want. Here we go. Let's see what the chat was. Who's who? Okay, so let's do that without going back to listen to it all. The first two blessings were recited by Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik. The next two blessings were recited by Rabbi Albert Gabay of Mikveh Israel. Then we had Reverend Sherman, who did the fifth, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth blessings, and then the seventh blessing was done by Rabbi Ira Rode. That was the order of the Chazanim. Now, I wanted to talk about, there are slight differences in Nusach with some of the blessings based on what other communities do, but I think the most dramatic differences are in the last blessing, and so that's what we're going to talk about today. And not just differences in Nusach, but also difference in the wording. But even within the Spanish-Portuguese world, what you heard in the synagogue ceremony with the choir was an elaborate composed piece for the phrase from Mehera to the end of the blessing, which even has some repeated words. Miniginatam got repeated a few times. And I don't have an attribution to who composed that music, although I somehow suspect that it's Leon Kramer, who was the first real choir master of the congregation in the 1880s. But it doesn't have it's not named. But it's definitely an art piece and not traditional. So I want to play for you this blessing as sung by Bram Cardozo without the choir, but with the traditional melody that is indicated here by the two dots for the Kol Sasson. So pay attention for that. And while you're doing that, you can sort of maybe pay a little closer attention to the words, and especially with this Ahava Achva Gilad Ditza. And maybe we'll come back, and we will come back to that afterwards. So here is Bram Cardozo's version, if it will click on it.
Baruch atah Adonai Elokeinu melech haolam asher bara sason v'simcha חתן וכלה, אהבה, אחווה, גלעד יצא, שלום ורעות. מהרה אדונם אלוקינו, ישמען בנערי יהודה, ובחוצות ירושלים. כל ששון וכל שמחה מצלות חופות חתנים עם אשתיהם ונגרים ינגינתם ברוך אתה אדונם משמח חתן עם הכלה ומצליח הודו לאדונם כי טוב כי לעולם חסדו תנוסנה נוחות מישראל ותרבנה שמחות.
Did anyone catch the last little switcheroo? Reverend Cardozo read Tanos na'anachot b'Yisrael v'tirbena samachot. Little change in the order of this last line. It makes no real difference. Tirbena samachot means that there should be more happy, more simcha, more joy, and Tanos na'anachot is we should have less mourning, less wailing, less sadness. So the order doesn't really matter, but that's the way he read it, and that's actually the way they do it in Amsterdam. Almost slightly different there as well. So, okay. So this is the blessing I want to talk about. No break. We'll talk about breaking glass another day. That's not for today. But I just really want to get into some of the words here because there's some things that are unusual in the Spanish Portuguese tradition. And if you're familiar with other traditions, you will see that. I think the one that stands out most is this word umatzliach. This is a Spanish Portuguese text. Not all Sephardim do this, although other communities do in North Africa, but I think the Syrians don't say this, the Edot HaMizrach do not say this, Turkish Jews don't say this, although I believe the North Africans do. So Moroccans and Libyans and Tunisians all do say umatzliach. It's not part of the seventh blessing, Claude. We'll get it another time. So that's, and then you have these sentences which I want to talk about maybe just a little bit. But before we do that, let's just take a look at what the source text for these blessings are. Source text for these blessings comes from the Talmud, all the way back in the Talmudic times, in Masechet Ketubot, of all places. Makes sense. And so the text that is traditional, at least the one in the Talmud itself, doesn't match this perfectly. So let's go to that. Okay. So what you have here is the text from the Gemara. And we can just look here. This is this goes through all of the blessings, and if you wanted to, we could go through all the differences between the blessings in the Talmud and the blessings that we said. But since I really just want to talk about the seventh blessing, the text of the Talmud is here. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. That matches. Asher bara sason v'simcha. So far, so good. Chatan v'kala. That's good. Now we get some differences. Gila rina ditza chedva. Ahava achva gila ditza. Not the same order of words at all. Although all the words in the Spanish Portuguese blessing appear here, but the one in the Talmud has more words. So it's Gila, Rina, Ditza, Chedva, Ahava, V'achva, Shalom, V're'ut. What words are missing in the Spanish Portuguese is there's no Rina and there's no Chedva. And also, we start with Ahava and Achva. So that is a significant difference. Then you have the rest that is basically the same. Mehera Hashem Elokeinu Yishama B'Yarei Yehuda U'B'chutzot Yerushalayim Kol Sason V'Kol Simcha Kol Chatan V'Kol Chala Kol Mitzhalot Chupot Chatanim Mishteihem. That's the way the Spanish Portuguese has it, and the Gemara has Kol Mitzhalot Chatanim Mechupatam Unarim Mishtei Niginatam Baruch Atah Hashem Mesameach Chatan Im Hakala. Blessed are you, Hashem, who brings joy to the groom with his bride, and that's the end of the blessing. And we have the word umatzliach. And as you might imagine, there are some people who object to this word umatzliach. It's not in the Gemara. Not only is it not in the Gemara, it's also not in the Rishonim. It's not in the Rambam. It's not in the Torah. It's not in the Shulchan Aruch. It's nowhere in the Rishonim. Because it's not part of the blessing in the Talmud. So, without going into too many responsa, I have just for you a summary of Ovadia Yosef. It's come from the Yalkut Yosef. It's sort of like an index of all of Ovadia Yosef's responsum, and he talks about this blessing, and he says, "Ein levarech birchat asher bara lehosif bechatima umatzliach." Don't use this word umatzliach that we have in our custom. It's not part of the blessing itself at all. That the rabbis instituted. And then he says, not only is the person making the blessing not supposed to say it, Not only shouldn't the Mesader Kiddushin or the person making the blessings not say it, the congregation shouldn't say it either. Amen. They shouldn't say this word, they should just say Amen. So says Ovad Yosef. I could, if we had a longer presentation, show you the various responsa on this topic, which generally fall out more or less like Ovad Yosef, saying that it's not part of the bracha, it shouldn't be said. And then some rabbis, especially North African ones, say, well, it's not actually a hefsek because it has to do with the general blessings, and so if you said it, it's okay, and it hasn't made a hefsek, you can still say amen. But most poskim don't really like this word. Nevertheless, it's part of our tradition, and we are not planning on changing it anytime soon. And so that is part of our sidur and part of our nusach. We say this word umatzliach, and then the choir says amen. Now, it's a little bit different in Amsterdam. Amsterdam, they do have the same text. They have umatzliach, but they separate the word umatzliach from the rest of the blessing, and they say amen before it. Probably, I'm not sure if that is, I assume it's a change made by poskim later on from the original way that they were singing it, which must have been similar to what we do here in New York, as well as in London. But I do have a recording of it, which is nice, and so we can listen to that, and you can see here, listen here how it's done live in Amsterdam. So I don't know if you could hear it. It was a little bit light, but the congregation said amen after im hakala, and then the chazan said umatzliach. People didn't say that part. And then he says hodu l'naki tov kilim chasto 2 times, not like what we do in New York, we just say it once. And then he says yirbu samachot b'Yisrael v'yanosna anacha. Slightly different text, same essential meaning, but not like what we had in Spanish Portuguese Sidur, not like what Bram Cardoso said, a third version, all just showing you that there's a lot of variety and it's not as settled as one would imagine for a pretty old custom, pretty old nusach. So, but I want to point out that umatzliach, right? So that's what we're talking about tonight. It's not in the Talmud, it's not in the Rishonim, it is in our text. The poskim don't like it. And what they did in Amsterdam, exactly when it started, I don't know, but they put the amen in where it ought to be at the end of the bracha, and then the Chazan says umatzliach right there. Okay. So we're going to continue, but I want to take a moment here just to mention the melody. So the melody that you heard for Kol Sasson, both in the Bram Cardoso recording as well as this one from Amsterdam, that is what I would call the wedding melody for the Spanish Portuguese Jews. You hear it here just for those few words, but it can be used for Masha Echalnu at the end of Birchat Mazon, for Shav Brachot, It can be used in Enkelokenu or Adon Olam, and it's a little bit repetitive, but it goes like this: Kol sason v'kol simcha, kol chatan v'kol kala. And then there's actually a part B, which is very similar, which I'm not going to sing for you, but that is the wedding melody. We don't use it often enough. I think we ought to. I was talking with Rabbi Rode this past Shabbat, which was what the Ashkenazim would call an aufruf. We had someone who was getting married this week, was in the synagogue and got called to the Torah. And I said we should use that melody for Enkelokenu. We thought about it. We played around with it. Decided not to do that melody this past week. But by right, I think we should. So there you get that instead of what you heard in the first recording, which is a composed art music, kind of complicated, hard to sing along with, this is the traditional melody, and it's intended that the congregation sing it together, which is why Dr. Poole in his Siddur puts these 2 stars there. Okay, now back to Umatzliach. So where does Umatzliach come from? No one really knows. The Keter Shem Tov, who I often look to and where I look to first for these things, does not know the origin of this word Umatzliach, but he has a theory. He has a theory that Umatzliach was an instruction or something that the congregation said after the chuppah, not part of the bracha, and that originally it was, in the Kitvei Yad, which we haven't seen any that are like this, that it would have been separated, maybe on the next line. But then, as time went on, and space is a premium, someone put it right at the end of the bracha, and then future generations just assumed it was part of the bracha, but really it's not part of the bracha, and that's what he theorizes without showing any proof. Then we come to something kind of interesting. So that was his theory, but then when I looked, and he thinks that in Amsterdam they do it separately. They make that they put a period or they put a parenthetical after the bracha. When I looked at the earliest printed editions from Amsterdam, they have it as part of the bracha directly. This is from 1620 something, and you can see without any, at least there's a period in Dr. Poole's book. It just goes chatan v'chala umatzliach. Also, different text as v'chala, not im hakala. So really a different text here. But not separating it out at all. It's really part of the bracha itself in this early printed edition of the Sheva Brachot from Amsterdam in the 17th century. What that does to Gagin's theory, I don't know. Maybe he's talking about much earlier Kitvei Yad from the Middle Ages, but I haven't seen any, and he doesn't quote any. It's just his theory about how this word got appended to the end of the blessing, and it's not Talmudic. But we do find it in some communities, and Gagin notes that, and he tells us that it's actually found, this word umatzliach is found in the nusach of the bracha as it is done in Cochin, in India. And I went looking for that. Oh, well, we're gonna close with Cochin, India. But before that, I found a wonderful recording online. And this is despite all the poskim saying not to have this word umatzliach, and the Syrians don't do it, and the Turkish Jews don't do it, and the Edot HaMizrach don't do it, but not just S&P. North Africans do it too. And I found a great recording. This is Joe Amar. I don't know how many of you know Joe Amar, the great Joe Amar, Moroccan, North African Chazan, spent a lot of time in France and in Canada. And right behind him, by the way, that's Shlomo Carlebach. I don't know whose wedding this is, but they had Joe Amar and Shlomo Carlebach. Must have been a good wedding to go to. And this is his rendition of the seventh bracha. I think I'm gonna have to, well, it's fun to listen to, but I'm gonna see if I can get it to a starting point that makes sense.
We would like to honor my father, Joe Amar, for the seventh bracha.
I apologize. I'm gonna skip right to where we need to go.
ובחוצות ירושלים כל ששון וכל שמחה, כל חתן וכל כלה, חתנים מחופתם ונערים משתי נגינתם. ברוך אתה אדוני, משמח החתן עם הכלה ומצליח.
So I just read to you, it's fun to listen to, and he's a great performer, but very clearly he says umatzliach as part of the bracha, and people say amen afterwards. So unlike what a lot of the poskim say to do, and unlike what most of the other Sephardic world does, he's falling aligned with the same as Spanish-Portuguese custom. The text of his bracha is actually different. I don't want to get into that today. One of the differences you may have heard is that it says hechatan, and we just have that's an extra hey that's not in the Spanish-Portuguese bracha. Okay. Misameach chatan or misameach hachatan. Okay. But now let's get back to India. So in the Nusach of Cochin, you have I found this online. It's pretty interesting. There's a recording which we're going to listen to, but as you can see here, the bracha is more or less like the Spanish-Portuguese. Misameach hechatan, that's not the S&P way. Im hakala umatzliach, and then the congregation says amen. And then they have this long thing which we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to close with. But let's listen to the way they read it. This is a recording from a chazan named Nehemiah Nachmiah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bara sason v'simcha adan v'chala gila v'rina bitza v'chedva ahava v'achva shalom v'reud Mer Adonai Eloheinu Shama be'arei Yehuda ובוסות ירושלים כל ששון וכל שמחה כל חתן וכל כלה כל ביצלות וחופות חתנים ממשתה ברוך אתה אדוני משמח חתן עם הכלה ומצליח או מצליחו או מקשתו במאמרו דשמיו שווה דקנה באורחודו יהיה הצלחה באורחודו יהיה סימן הטבע באורחודו יש סימן העמליה ואורי הודו לאדוני כי טוב ירבו שמחות בישראל
היום הזה בירושלים
עושים ושמחים וטוב לב בבניין בית המקדש וברמון יצליח לאדם הזה ולכלה הזו איתה שלום ביניכם ואמרו
So this is the text that's done in Cochin. I don't know if there are any Jews in Cochin anymore. I think the only ones I can think of are actually related to the members of our congregation. You can ask Fiona if there are any Jews in Cochin and whether they can say this bracha anymore. I don't know if there's a Cochin synagogue in Israel, although this recording was made in Israel. But they have two things that are very interesting. One is this word umatzliach, which appears at the end of the bracha, and then the congregation says amen. And then it has this additional thing, much longer than the Hodu L'Adonai Ki Tov that S&P says. It has a whole text that says that that heaven should give success, and mikashta is kind of like adornments to them. Yashve takana be'orcha chada. God should have their path should be straight. Yihatzlacha be'orcha chada. Their path should be successful. Their path should have siman tav, a good sign. And then it has hodu l'Adonai Ki Tov kilim chasto. And then it has the same word, Yirbu Smachot Yisrael. Doesn't have Tanos Nanacha. Kehayom Hazeb Yushalayim Sasim Usmechim Betove Le Bebinyan Beit HaMikdash. Abraham Yatzliach Lechatan Hazeh Lekala Hazot Yita Shalom Beinechem. God should grant them success and peace among them. And it has this phrase in the middle of this. It's not found in any other nusach. It's unique to Kojin. But it has this phrase in the middle. Kehayom hazeh b'Yushalayim sasim usmechim betovei lev bebinyan Beit HaMikdash. Like this joy that we have at the wedding, we should have in Jerusalem with the building of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, that text is quite old, and or at least some connection to something very old, and that's the Seder of Amram Gaon. Which so this goes back to Gaonic period. At least parts of this prayer go back to Gaonic periods. I'm going to try to make this smaller so you can see it. This is from the Seder of Amram Gaon. It's from the Chelik Bet. If you have a copy of this at home somewhere, I think maybe Isaac Pollack might have one. I don't know, but I know that Rabbi Kretzmer Seed has it. It's for sure. But here you have that. It's in the modern text, it's given sort of a footnote, but in the Ktav Yad, at least one of the Kitvei Yad of this manuscript of the Seder of Amram Gaon, it has this text: Kehayom hazeh b'Yerushalayim yirbu smachot b'Yisrael v'yanusu anachot miYisrael. So the text that we have, these verses that we add, are very similar right off the bat to this text that's coming right after the bracha. In Babylonian, in Gaonic text. Yirbu b'sorot tovot b'Yisrael should have many happy news. Yeshuot, you should have redemption, nechamot, and we should have a much comfort in Israel, love and blessings. It just goes on and on. Gila, Ditzah, your behod, vad, zechut, your chatan. You should have many grooms in Israel and holidays, good days. Eliyahu Navi should come. Melech Mashiach should come. Yatzlichu chatan v'chala. You know, we have umatzliach here. You have the bride and groom should be successful. Yismechu shnehem zeh mzeh. So you have this long text. And as far as I know, this is the oldest one that we can find with these additional blessings for the Chatan and Kala that are not really part of the blessing. They're sort of additions. And now, one of the things that I thought was interesting in the recording was it wasn't consistent, but a lot of this was responsive, so that the Chazan said something like Yehei Simanam Me'aliyah, and then the congregation was B'orcha Hada. You know, that they would repeat, they would say the next words. It was like a responsive thing, which I think lends a lot of credence to the theory of Shem Tov Gagin that I said earlier. That really the blessing ends here at Im HaKala. At least according to the Talmud and all the Rishonim, that's where the blessing ends. By right, we should say Amen right there. And that's what they do in Amsterdam. But there is, at least from the old Babylonian text and the Seder of Rambam, and we see in Cochin and we see in Spanish Portuguese, there are additional blessings to say. And maybe that is indicated. Maybe this umasliach is kind of an instruction to the congregation or to the chazan. Don't forget the extra parts, umatzliach, and then you say this text starting with ha matzlacha v'ha makashta that they do in Cochin. That is the best theory that I can come up with. I will keep searching for finding it in an actual manuscript somewhere, these words umatzliach or these extra blessings, but really they only appear in Seder Rambam and not even the same way that we have it in the S&P. So when next time you go to a wedding, pay attention to what they do. If they say the words umatzliach, you know you're in a Sephardic, Western Sephardic, or Andalusian or a Maghrabi kind of ceremony, and it's special. It really is special, and so you should all be matzliach as well. I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to stop the recording to let everybody talk to each other, and let's take a look at the notes here.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Thank you, Isaac, for joining. I know I should. Ketmer Sleed actually published this online with a translation, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, in open pseudo, I think.
Yeah, I found that like 5 minutes before my class. I wish I had seen it a few days ago. Including
why repeat Hodu if you said it in Baruch Haba? Baruch Haba. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chesdo in Baruch Haba.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chesdo is said when the bride is coming in. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chesdo.
Yeah.
Why repeat it? So why repeat it after the last beracha?
Got an answer for me? I don't know.
It's repetitive.
Repetitive. The whole thing is repetitive. The whole blessing is repetitive. How many times can you say Gila, Rina, Dita, Chedva? They're all the same thing. Pretty much.
Oh no, they're different shades.
Everything is a different shade, exactly. Okay. Umatzliach, he should succeed. Yeah. So but also is misameach atan. It's in the singular. The blessing is for the groom. Im hakala. It's he should be happy. He should be made to be. God makes the groom happy with his wife, with his bride. So umatzliach is. It's not. If it were to be part of the blessing, you'd want it right there in the front as well. But it's clearly not really part of it because it comes at the end after the whole phrase is finished. So you're right, Roger. That is, so I see, Rabbi, I don't know if anyone sees this. In some liberal Ashkenazi communities, the text, Orthodox communities, the text that we just saw, from Rabbi Amram, has been added after the Shav Brachot with no chatima, so it's not an actual blessing, but for women, for the bride or for a woman to say. I like that. That's a nice addition. Okay, I'm gonna turn off the recording. I thought I did it earlier, but I see I didn't.